Bravo.
Thank you. So that last verse, "We shall rise," is really the slogan we hear a lot these days. Last year I had the honor to organize, along with Michael here. We were the two people who really pushed on the East Bay and the West Bay the labor rise for climate jobs justice, and had a very inspirational labor contingent of 500 people in the climate march on September 8th. This work has been going on a long time, and I felt like I've been crying in the wilderness ever since I went to Paris in 2015 and observed, wow, the strength of the French labor movement and the strength of the internationalists there. But recently have been so inspired by youth in Sunrise. And it's given me, I would say, a ray of hope, both in the labor movement and in youth and in all of us together. You know, Naomi Klein says it's just so huge, we need everyone to change everything. And I have long lost hope in the capitalist system, as I'm sure everyone here has. What is the way forward? I'm really not sure, but I do know we have to build a movement, and where I have something to say is in the labor movement. I left Southern California, came to San Francisco, landed a job in a restaurant that happened to be union, and I've been union ever since. I became a nurse through City College, San Francisco State, and am now a member of SEIU 10 to 1. I worked as a nurse for 27 years, mainly with immigrants right here in the Mission, and I took an early retirement about 3 years ago because I wanted to put a lot more energy into the big, big problems of inequality, of immigration, of climate, and leave nursing behind for a little while. So I am blessed to have a pension, blessed to have a union that is now providing me with a way of life where I can do this full time. So as I said, the Sunrise Movement has inspired me. The Green New Deal has burst upon the scene, and I have to say, the urgency that youth feel, also a lot of older people feel too. We all have children, family, friends, and neighbors who have now finally realized this is not something for 2100. This is hitting us all very, very personally, even here in the Bay Area. Those 2 weeks of the worst air in the world, I think, were a wake-up call, and they also have caused a whole heck of a lot of health problems that have not been adequately documented. And as a nurse, I was appalled that volunteers gave out masks to people in the street and workers, and the city didn't provide them. I strongly believe the public sector has a huge, huge role to play in the Green New Deal, and labor has a strong role to play, and that we have to force our federal government to fund renewables away from fossil fuels. That's the bottom line. Sometimes it's hard to mention fossil fuels around people that work in fossil fuels. The only reason I mentioned around my dad, because I was a teenager and I was a rebel. But it's a hard conversation to have. We've just come off a labor convergence in the East Bay that was put on by the Alameda Labor Council that had some hard questions raised, but there were rays of hope as we saw some unions actually give us some concrete examples of a just transition. So what I've been trying to do in SEIU as public workers is figure out what is the intersection between lack of housing, poor pay, not a good retirement, our migrants that are persecuted, and climate. When we have surveyed our members in 10 to 1, climate comes out about 5%. 5% of our members think climate has some importance. That was the last year, I think a year ago. I have to believe that's changed right now, but I don't know how much. My job in the Climate Justice Committee is to try to make these connections and try to get resolutions passed, because if a resolution is passed, for example, SEIU 10 to 1 endorses the Congressional Green New Deal, which we hope to see in a matter of weeks, I can get up and say, I represent not just one person, but 60,000 people. And that is the power of the labor movement. If we can make change in the form of resolutions and turn those resolutions into action, we speak for a whole lot of people. SEIU has 2 million members across the United States. And I just found on WikiLeaks, oh boy, I Googled how many union members are there in the United States. There's 15 million. Now that's down a whole heck of a lot from the time when Florence Reed wrote that song, but that's still a powerful group of people that are used to confronting bosses and getting what they need. So in San Francisco, we passed a resolution endorsing the Green New Deal at the level of Labor Council. It's winding its way through several unions, but there's still handfuls of members that I think it's important. What we do see are marches, disrupt inequality, strike school. There are examples of militancy in a whole lot of places. Taxi workers, a good example. People standing up, really saying publicly and taking the power of their voices. How to increase our numbers is key for me. Sunrise is great, but we have to build a movement. The link I feel we have to make with our members is that the crisis in income gap and housing crisis, income inequality make climate not a luxury, but a necessity. Because as resilient cities like San Francisco have pretty much good air, we still have a lot of water, we've got beautiful houses, we have parks and schools that all of us union members worked in the 90s and the 2000s to make sure that they were not cut. We have a lot of services that now people with money can move in and take advantage of that. Where our workers, our members, our communities are displaced every single day from evictions, from lack of jobs, you name it. And especially communities of color are disproportionately affected. We've seen that time and time again. If we can make these connections, I'm hoping it will build a unified movement. That's my hope for the future, that Sunrise has pushed this into our faces, as has the bad air and the fires and our members who have lost homes in many places now through hurricanes, extreme weather. If we can make these connections and find allies also in the peace movement, then I feel like we have a shred of hope. But it requires us to do a lot more than we are doing now and find energy where we never knew we had it.
Bravo.